The sun was already sinking low when Emma finally came home from work. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the dishwasher humming softly in the kitchen. She put down her bag, slipped off her shoes, and glanced at the dining table. It was covered with open notebooks, pencils, and one very frustrated 12-year-old boy staring down at a math worksheet. Daniel's brow was furrowed, his pencil tapping nervously against the page. Emma smiled despite her tiredness. These evenings had become their routine, a rhythm she had grown used to. Work during the day, dinner in the evening, and then hours spent side by side with her son, guiding him through problems that seemed impossible to him at first, but eventually made sense. It was exhausting sometimes, but it was also their time. A part of her day she secretly cherished. Long division again. She asked gently as she walked over. Daniel groaned. "It's like the numbers are fighting with me, Mom." She sat down beside him, pulling the worksheet closer. Numbers don't fight. They wait patiently until you understand them. Her voice carried a calm certainty that Daniel had learned to trust. He always believed her, even when he didn't believe in himself. Emma began explaining step by step, pointing to each number, showing him how to carry over the digits, how to check his work. She kept her tone encouraging, never sharp, even when he made mistakes. Daniel's eyes followed her hand, his pencil moving hesitantly at first, then more confidently. The tension in his shoulders slowly eased. Moments like this reminded Emma of his father. There had been a time when homework was something she and her husband had planned to share. But when he left years ago, everything changed. The burden fell on her shoulders alone. Yet she never let Daniel see it as a burden. She carried it with pride, determined to make sure her son grew up knowing love, even if it came from only one parent. Daniel looked up at her with a small, crooked smile. "You make it sound easy." "It is easy," she said, nudging him playfully. "You just have to look at it the right way." They worked through problem after problem. For every wrong answer, Emma patiently showed him where he slipped, guiding his hand until the right solution appeared. And with each success, Daniel's grin grew wider, his confidence slowly rebuilding. He wasn't just learning math. He was learning resilience, the quiet kind that Emma had lived every day since his father left. The minutes turned into an hour. The ticking clock on the wall filled the pauses. The scratching pencil filled the silence. For Emma, time didn't matter in those moments. She watched her son's face light up when he finally got a problem right on his own. And she felt her heart swell with pride. At one point, Daniel leaned back and sighed dramatically. "Mom, I don't think I'll ever be good at this." Emma placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Danny, you're better than you think. You've just got to give yourself time. Nobody is perfect at everything, but you don't quit. That's what matters." Her words hung in the air, simple but powerful. Daniel stared at her for a moment, something thoughtful flickering in his eyes. She didn't notice it fully then, but it was a look that carried more weight than his age suggested. It wasn't just about math. He was listening to her in a deeper way, holding on to her encouragement like it was more than advice about numbers. It was advice about life. Emma tried to keep things light. She cracked a joke about how she used to hate fractions when she was his age, and Daniel laughed. The sound filled the room, pushing away the heaviness that sometimes clung to their evenings. That laugh, so pure and unguarded, reminded her why she never complained about the long hours or the struggles of raising him alone. This was worth everything. Finally, after one last problem, Daniel closed his notebook with a dramatic sigh of victory. Done. At least until tomorrow. Emma chuckled, collecting the pencils. "You did well today." "Because you helped me," he replied. His voice was soft, almost shy. Emma looked at him closely then. There was something in his tone, something tender that pulled at her heart. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "I'll always help you. That's what moms do." They moved to the kitchen, where Emma made them both hot cocoa, the smell of chocolate filling the air. Daniel sat by the window, his hands wrapped around the warm mug. The night sky stretched above them, dotted with stars. For a while, they just sat there in silence, sipping their drinks, sharing the quiet. But Emma noticed Daniel kept glancing at her. His eyes lingered, his lips pressed together as if holding back words. She tilted her head curiously. "What is it?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Nothing. Just, thanks for helping me, Mom." Emma smiled, though her heart tugged strangely at his hesitation. She wanted to press further, but she didn't. Instead, she kissed the top of his head and whispered, "Always, Danny, always." Later, after homework was tucked away and dishes washed, Emma tucked Daniel into bed. She smoothed the blanket over him and kissed his forehead as she always did. But when she closed his door, she lingered in the hallway for a moment, her hand resting on the wood. Something about the look in his eyes earlier stayed with her. It was as if he was carrying thoughts too big for his age. Questions he wasn't ready to say aloud. Emma brushed it aside for now, telling herself he was just tired from school. But deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of something more. The next day began like any other. The morning rush, the clatter of dishes, Emma urging Daniel to eat his toast faster so they wouldn't miss the school bus. Life had its rhythm, and Emma found comfort in that, even when she felt worn out. But beneath the ordinary, she couldn't shake the feeling of last night, the way Daniel's eyes had held something unspoken. The way his voice carried weight when he said thanks. It lingered in her chest like a whisper she couldn't quite catch. At work, her mind wandered back to it often. She tried focusing on her tasks, answering emails, and managing calls. But that moment at the kitchen table kept slipping in between her thoughts. Daniel wasn't a boy who often kept things from her. He was usually open, honest, and sometimes even too chatty. That hesitation unsettled her. She wondered if something was happening at school, bullying, maybe, or struggles with friends. The idea made her heart ache. By the time she returned home that evening, Emma decided she would gently ask him about it. The house smelled faintly of pasta sauce from the slow cooker. And Daniel was already at the table, this time working on English homework. He looked up and smiled when she walked in, and it warmed her immediately. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Hey, Danny, how's the essay going?" "Hard, but not as bad as math." Emma laughed softly, setting her bag down. She walked over and glanced at his paper. His handwriting was neat, but his sentences were short, hesitant. She could see him struggling to find the right words. She thought of how, in some ways, writing was just like life. It was about learning to express what was inside. Even when it wasn't easy, she leaned against the table. "Want some help?" He shrugged, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. "Maybe just with the ending. I don't know how to make it sound." "Good." So she sat beside him again. Together, they read through his essay. It was about heroes. Daniel had chosen to write about people who stood strong when times were hard. Emma's chest tightened as she read his words. The sentences were simple, but the meaning was clear. He wrote about resilience, kindness, and how true heroes never left when others needed them. Emma swallowed hard. Her mind flashed back to the man who had once promised to be there for both of them, but walked away. She brushed the thought aside and focused on Daniel. "This is really good," she told him sincerely. "You're writing from the heart. That's what makes it strong." Daniel looked at her with that same thoughtful expression he had the night before. His lips parted as though he wanted to say something. Emma waited, her own heart holding still. But again, he looked down at his paper instead. For a moment, the room was filled only with the sound of the pen scratching against the page. Then Daniel spoke quietly, almost too quietly. "Do you think heroes can be regular people, Mom? Like, not famous or strong, but just—" Here, Emma blinked, caught off guard by the question. She studied his face, the seriousness in his eyes. "Of course," she said gently. "Heroes are often the people right next to us. The ones who love us, who don't give up, who make sure we're never alone. Those are the real heroes." Daniel's hand froze over his paper. He didn't look up. He only nodded slightly, as though her answer meant more to him than he could say. Emma wanted to reach for him to ask why he asked that. But she sensed he wasn't ready to share. After dinner, as they washed the dishes together, Emma tried again. "Danny," she began softly, "last night, you looked like you wanted to say something." Is something on your mind? He dried a plate slowly, his gaze fixed on the towel in his hands. For a long moment, he was quiet. Emma's chest tightened, waiting, hoping he would open up. Finally, he whispered, I'm glad you're my mom." Emma's throat closed. The words were simple, yet heavy with emotion. She smiled, blinking back the sudden sting in her eyes. "And I'm glad you're my son," she replied, keeping her voice steady. But as she turned away to place the dishes back, she felt it again, that sense of something deeper hiding behind his words. He was holding back, and she couldn't push him. She had to wait until he was ready. That night, after Daniel went to bed, Emma sat by the window with a cup of tea. The street outside was quiet, the faint glow of porch lights stretching across the neighborhood. She thought about her life, the choices that had brought her here, the battles she had fought silently. Raising Daniel alone had never been easy, but he was the reason she kept going. She had tried to be strong for him, but now she wondered if he was beginning to notice the cracks in her strength. Her phone buzzed with a message from a coworker. A tea, but she ignored it. Instead, she whispered to herself, "I hope he knows I'm doing my best." What Emma didn't realize was that Daniel did see. He saw the long hours she worked, the tired way she sometimes smiled, the way she never let go of his hand when he needed her most. And in his heart, he carried a secret one he wasn't ready to voice yet. Upstairs, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mother's words about heroes echoed in his mind. He thought about the times she had comforted him after nightmares. The way she had sat through endless school projects, the way she never gave up even when life was hard. To him, she wasn't just his mother. She was the very definition of a hero. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to say the words that pressed against his chest every time he looked at her. But something held him back, a fear he couldn't name, a worry that it might change things. So he stayed silent, whispering the words only to himself. And so the night ended with both of them carrying unspoken truths, Emma sensing her son's hidden weight, and Daniel holding close the words that could change everything. Neither knew that the moment of truth was closer than they thought. The week rolled on, and Emma found herself watching Daniel more closely than usual. His laughter came easily around his friends. His chatter filled the car on the way home from school. Yet, when the evening settled and it was just the two of them, he grew quieter. There was something he carried in silence, something waiting to break free. Emma knew it, even if she couldn't name it. It was Friday night when the moment came. The rain tapped gently against the windows, soft and steady, wrapping the house in a kind of hush. Emma had cooked a simple dinner, and afterward, she and Daniel curled up on the couch to watch a movie. It was one of those family films they had seen before, the kind that made them both laugh at the same parts, no matter how many times they watched it. But halfway through, Emma noticed Daniel wasn't really watching. His eyes stayed on the screen, but his body was tense, his shoulders stiff. He chewed at his bottom lip, something he only did when he was nervous. Emma didn't press him. She had learned long ago that patience often opened doors faster than questions. Finally, during a quiet part of the movie, Daniel turned toward her. His voice was small, almost drowned by the sound of the rain. Emma muted the television and shifted so she could face him fully. "Yes, sweetheart." Daniel's hands fidgeted in his lap. He stared at them as though searching for the right words there. When he finally lifted his gaze, his eyes were bright with something raw, hope, maybe both. "You said heroes are the people who stay," he began carefully, his voice trembling slightly. Emma nodded, her heart tightening. "That's right." He swallowed hard. "Then, you're my hero." The words landed in the room like a spark, lighting up everything Emma had been wondering, everything she had been afraid of missing. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She had expected worry, maybe a question about his absent father, maybe even anger. But this pure, honest declaration left. Her shaken daughter lips parted, but nothing came out at first. She reached for his hand, wrapping it gently in hers. "Daniel," she whispered, her throat thick. He went on, his voice steadier now, as though once the words started, he couldn't hold them back. "I know you think I don't notice, but I do. I see how hard you work. I see how tired you are and you still help me with everything. You never quit on me, even when it's just us. That's what makes someone a hero, right?" Tears blurred Emma's vision. She squeezed his hand, shaking her head in disbelief. "Oh, honey." Daniel's eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. "I don't need anyone else, Mom. I don't care about Dad leaving. I just need you. And I wanted you to know that." Emma pulled him into her arms before the tears could spill over. She held him tightly, her heart aching and swelling all at once. All the years of doubt, of wondering if she was enough, of fearing she was failing him, every single one was washed away by his words. He didn't just see her struggles, he honored them. He understood. For a long moment they stayed like that, mother and son wrapped in silence, the sound of rain steady outside. Emma rested her cheek on his hair, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo, grounding herself in the reality of this moment. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled but was filled with certainty. "Daniel, you don't know what those words mean to me. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right, if I'm giving you enough. But hearing you say that, it makes everything worth it." He leaned back slightly to look at her, his expression soft but firm. "You are enough, Mom. More than enough." The weight of his words settled deep in her chest. Emma felt something shift inside her, a quiet healing she hadn't even realized she needed. The long nights of loneliness, the whispered doubts when bills piled up, the ache of broken promises from someone who had walked away, they all seemed smaller now. Daniel's love was enough to fill those cracks. The movie played on in the background, forgotten. Emma brushed her hand through Daniel's hair, her heart steadier than it had been in years. She realized in that moment that their little family, though different, though built through hardship, was whole in its own way. Stronger even, because it was made of truth and love. Later, when Daniel had gone upstairs to bed, Emma sat alone in the quiet living room. She replayed his words in her mind again and again. "You're my hero." Each time it brought a new wave of warmth through her chest. She thought of the years ahead, the challenges still to come, but she no longer felt afraid of them. She knew they could face anything together. Upstairs, Daniel lay awake, a small smile tugging at his lips. For the first time in a long while, he felt lighter, freer, like a weight had lifted. He had said what he needed to say. And he knew his mom understood. What neither of them knew was how much this moment would change the course of their lives. Emma's doubts had always been her quiet battle, but now, with Daniel's words echoing in her heart, she would walk forward with a new strength. And Daniel, in seeing her break into tears of relief, understood something too, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth. The rain slowed outside, leaving only the sound of dripping from the gutters. The night seemed softer, calmer, as though it too recognized the shift that had happened in their little home. Emma whispered into the stillness, "We're going to be okay." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. But even as she found peace in that moment, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel's words carried more weight than he had revealed. There was still something in his eyes, a truth he hadn't fully spoken yet. She didn't know it then, but soon. Another conversation would leave her even more surprised, one that would push her to see not only her son differently, but herself as well. The weekend began quietly, but Emma carried Daniel's words with her like a treasure. She found herself smiling more, humming softly while making breakfast. And even the simple act of folding laundry felt lighter. For years she had battled the unspoken fear that she wasn't enough for him. But now, she had proof straight from Daniel's heart that she was more than enough. On Saturday morning, they went to the grocery store together. Daniel pushed the cart, pretending it was a race car, and Emma laughed at his sound effects. For the first time in a long while, the errands didn't feel heavy. She noticed the way people looked at them, just a mother and her son, but for her, 'twas everything. That night, after dinner, Daniel came downstairs carrying a notebook. His face was serious, his hands gripping the edges of the cover. He sat on the couch beside her and opened it carefully, revealing pages filled with drawings, scribbles, and bits of writing. Emma leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "I've been working on this," Daniel said softly, It's not homework. It's just for me." Emma smiled. "Can I see?" He nodded and flipped through the pages. There were small sketches of superheroes, but they weren't the kind for movies. These were everyday people, teachers, nurses, even a woman with a grocery bag in one hand and a child in the other. At the top of one page, in Daniel's careful handwriting, were the words, "Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they're moms." Emma's breath caught. "Daniel." He blushed, but didn't look away. "I'm writing a story. It's about heroes who don't get noticed, but they're still the strongest. And the main character is based on you." Tears pricked her eyes again, but she held them back this time. Instead, she reached out and touched the page. "This is beautiful, and so are you for writing it." Daniel grinned shyly. "I didn't tell you before, but I want to be a writer someday. Or maybe a teacher. Something that makes people feel like you make me feel." Emma pulled him close, her heart swelling with pride. "Then you will, sweetheart. You already have the heart for it." The rest of the evening they went through the notebook together. Emma listened as Daniel read pieces of his story aloud, his voice shaky at first, but growing more confident with each page. She could see his world, his thoughts, his hope, written in those words. It was as if he had taken everything they had lived through the challenges. The quiet victories and turned it into something meaningful. Later that night, after Daniel had gone to bed, Emma sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. She stared at the rain-streaked window, her reflection faint in the glass. She realized something profound: her life hadn't turned out the way she once dreamed. But maybe it had turned out exactly as it needed to. She wasn't raising Daniel alone anymore. They were growing together, building each other's strength in ways that no one else could. Sunday morning came with golden light spilling through the curtains. Emma made pancakes and Daniel set the table, humming to himself. They laughed over syrup spills and inside jokes, the kind that only belonged to them. In the afternoon, Daniel asked if they could go for a walk. The rain had cleared, leaving the air fresh and cool. They wandered through the neighborhood, talking about small things, school projects, favorite movies, even silly questions about what superpower they would choose if they could. Emma noticed how much taller he had grown, how his voice carried more confidence now. And she felt both proud and wistful. As they passed a small park, Daniel suddenly stopped. He turned to her, his expression serious, the same look he had worn on the couch the night he called her his hero. "Mom, can I tell you something else?" Emma nodded, bracing herself. "Always." He took a deep breath. "Sometimes I used to feel jealous when I saw other kids with their dads at school events or when they talked about weekend trips. I didn't want to tell you because I thought it would hurt you. But now I know it doesn't matter. Because I have something even better. I have you. And you've given me everything I need." Emma's throat tightened, but this time her tears fell freely. She knelt down so she could look him in the eye, cupping his face in her hands. "Daniel, thank you for telling me. I know it hasn't been easy for you. But I want you to know something. Too, I've never once wished for a different life. You're my greatest joy, and I will always, always be here for you." Daniel smiled, his eyes shining. "I know, Mom. That's why I'm not afraid of the future anymore." The moment stretched between them, deep and unbreakable. The park around them faded, the sounds of other children playing becoming distant. All that mattered was the bond they shared, stronger than any absence, stronger than any struggle. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Emma realized how much had changed in just a few days. Daniel's honesty had broken open a door between them, letting in light she hadn't even known she needed. And his story, the one he had written in that notebook, wasn't just about heroes. It was about them, about how love, no matter how imperfect, could heal, strengthen, and inspire. After dinner, Daniel disappeared into his room for a while, and when he returned, he held a single piece of paper. He handed it to Emma with a grin. Dot at the top, in bold letters, was the title, "The Hero Who Stayed." Beneath it, a dedication. "For Mom who never gave up on me." Emma pressed the paper to her chest, overwhelmed. She pulled Daniel into a hug, whispering, "You've changed my life too." That night, when the house was quiet, Emma lay in bed thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The heartbreak, the challenges, the countless nights she had doubted herself, it all led to this moment. To hearing her son call her his hero. To seeing him grow into a young man filled with love and strength, she realized the truth. She hadn't just raised Daniel, he had raised her too. He had taught her patience, resilience, and the kind of love that could turn even the hardest days into something worth remembering. And as sleep finally came, Akama smiled. For the first time in years, she didn't just hope they would be okay. She knew it.